Go live. Content info landmark, cancel. Clickable confirm button. Press ESC to exit full screen alert. MuseScore Café Mastering MuseScore. Press ESC to exit full screen. MuseScore Café Mastering MuseScore document. Content info. Invite co-hosts.
Aha.
Toolbar. Community. Muse. Bar line single bar line. Measure 1 beat 1. Blank. N. Note in normal mode, rest half, space.
Hello everyone, this is Marc Sabatella from Mastering MuseScore. I'd like to welcome you to the MuseScore Café, and I'm coming to you from a different system than usual, so if things are a little off, I apologize for any technical issues. It does seem like maybe it took a little longer than usual for things to get started. Not sure what's going on, but anyhow, this is the MuseScore Café, my regular weekly series where we talk about using MuseScore, making music using MuseScore, and different aspects of the program, how you can use it to create music, to listen to music, to do all those different sorts of things you can do. And I have a different theme that I use every week to talk about, and today's theme is accessibility. It's kind of a special theme, so we've probably got some new people here, and I hope that things are actually going to work, because it is kind of a special thing. And let me make sure I don't see anyone participating in the chat yet, so I'm hoping things work. So please let me know. Please introduce yourselves in the chat if you're able to. I do see people joining now, so whatever might have been going on, I apologize for whatever might have happened to delay the start of this. On my end, things were working. So anyhow, I do see people here, and this is great. You can hear other voices talking, and this is a screen reader. So those of you who are new to hearing about accessibility, and in particular how blind people may use software, this is going to be an interesting experience, I think, for a lot of people. So please, would someone please check in the chat and let me know if everything's okay here, because right now I'm seeing weird things happening and I don't know why, and I would like to know that things are working before I get going too much further. So yeah, so my chat
Clickable.
is just not chatting.
Clickable.
Oh, I turned off my screen share. I didn't mean to. Let me turn my screen share back on.
Choose what to share dialogue
although
entire
in some
screen
sense,
tab.
it would be a little interesting not to.
Mastering
Right? Here's the chat button.
MuseScore Café Mastering MuseScore document.
And chat just
Blank.
doesn't seem to be
Chat.
working for me. So I'm just going to have to trust that things are working, because something is obviously not happening correctly here. But give me a moment. Give me another moment. Yeah. All right. I'm going to keep talking. I'm going to tell you what. I'm going to talk. If you can hear me, try. If I look at the participants list here, I can see if you raise hand. So what I want anyone to do is click the raise hand button at the bottom if you can hear me. Click the raise hand button, and then if I see hands going up here, oh, Richard, yay, thank you, excellent. Glad to hear it. So at least one person can hear me. So I'm just going to go on, all right? And excellent, beautiful. More hands going up. Perfect, perfect, perfect. So not sure what's going on with the chat, but for some reason I'm not able to see it. I was able to see it before, and now I'm not, and I don't know why. All right, I'm going to regroup and welcome everyone again to the MuseScore Café if you missed the initial welcome. And what I want to do is talk a little bit about what I mean by accessibility here. And actually, I am going to try something. I'm going to try on my other system here, just leaving and coming back to see if that fixes anything about my chat on my other system, because I feel like this would be an especially useful episode to be able to chat with people, right? So let me just do a quick version of that here. I'm going to close this window and reopen it over here. And it is now coming back, and the question will be, will my chat work now? Hey, it works. I see the chat. Perfect. Okay, then in that case, I don't know what's happening on this window. I ain't going to worry about it because I see the chat on my other window, so I'm happy. I'm just going to close it on this window then because
MuseScore Café
it's
Mastering.
not accomplishing anything for me. And I'll just look over on my other screen every once in a while. These are the things that we deal with here. First world problems, right? All right, so let's talk a little bit about what I mean by accessibility. Accessibility means a lot of different things. It means making a product or a service, software in this case, usable to people with different abilities. And in particular, I'm usually talking, if I use the word accessibility with respect to MuseScore, I'm usually talking about visual impairments. You know, there's other kinds of impairments that might affect one's use. There's motor impairments, there's hearing impairments, and there are accessibility concerns for all of those as well. But I'm going to mostly be talking about visual impairments because that's where we've made the most sort of specific assistance going on. So the first thing I want to show you here is for people who are completely blind or almost completely blind, they usually rely on a screen reader. So when you keep hearing a voice kind of interrupt me, this is a screen reader called NVDA that I have running on this computer. There's a number of different screen readers. There's ones for Windows, there's ones for Mac, and there's ones for Linux. So what I'm going to do is just show you a little bit about what the screen reader kind of is doing here. Every time I press a key, first of all, we're going to see, now the screen reader has stopped, yes?
Tempo equals 92. Measure 1 beat 1 edit equals 92.
So every time I select an element in the score,
System text swing 16 THS. Measure 1 beat 1 edit swing 16 THS.
Notice that the screen reader is reading the contents of the screen. So that is a huge, important part of what accessibility means with respect to MuseScore. So I am using a shortcut that is available to everyone, and I find it very useful, but it is critically important for
MuseScore Café Mastering MuseScore Google Chrome.
Interesting. It's my cursor has gone funny here. I'm not sure why. Something's notifying my computer about something. Come back.
MuseScore Café.
Back.
Not
MuseScore
Café Mastering Muse.
I have to remember I can press Control on my keyboard to pause the screen reader, and that's very useful. So anyhow, the shortcut that I'm going to point out here is a shortcut for navigating individual elements. So, and I mentioned this in the newsletter, right? If I select a rest,
MuseScore Café window, rest half, measure 1,
and then if I press the right arrow,
rest 16th,
it moves to the next
one beat
rest.
3.
If I move the right arrow again,
Note G5/16, measure 1 beat 3.25 dynamic MF start of hairpin crescendo start of slur.
so notice it read the note as well as all the, it read the G, it read the MF, it read the start of hairpin, and it read the start of slur. If I now hit right arrow again,
Note G flat 5/16, measure 1 beat 3.5 accidental flat.
it read the next note, right? And so this left and right arrows by themselves go to individual notes. And when you get to a note that has markings, it'll read those markings. But if you want to actually select those markings, I'm going to move back to the G.
Note G5/16.
If I want to actually select that dynamic marking, you can do that with the keyboard by pressing Alt-Right. So I'm going to press Alt-Right.
Dynamic MF, measure 1 beat 3.25 edit.
And that selected the dynamic. If I press Alt-Right again,
Hairpin crescendo.
there's the hairpin, the crescendo. Now let me hit the Alt-Right again.
Dummy panel, slur.
Dummy panel. Wow, seriously? Okay, I had not heard that one before. Totally had not heard that message before. I have no idea what that refers to. Anyhow, moving on, Alt-Right.
Score MuseScore Café panel, note G flat 5/16, measure 1 beat 3.5 accidental flat.
So Alt-Right will eventually move through all the notes, but it also moves through all the other markings. So it'll do things like read the clefs, read the key signatures and time signatures, and allows you to access all of those things. So Alt-Left and Alt-Right are hugely important shortcuts for anyone trying to use MuseScore with keyboard rather than the mouse, because otherwise, normally, if you can use a mouse and see the screen, then you can click the
Dynamic
MF to
MF.
select it. But if you're using the keyboard to do all of your navigation, you need to use Alt-Left and Alt-Right, and of course the screen reader will be giving you that feedback. So I'm seeing
MuseScore
comments
Café,
here
not
about
responding.
people were dark had to reconnect. So yeah, I don't know what's going on, and I'm apologize for whatever issues might have been going on, and hopefully things are better now, and hopefully the recording is good. So anyhow, I'm going to keep going, and I want to mention what Ariana mentions here about score colors inverted, because yes, one of the very first things I want to talk about here, other than the screen reader, and is how you can make the user interface more visible if you have some vision. If you have low vision, but you need things to be larger, higher contrast, etc. So I'm going to show you where those settings are. So the support for screen readers, just before I stop talking about screen readers, is not new. There's been some support for screen readers ever since MuseScore 2. And then at MuseScore 3, this was improved at like 3.5, I think it was improved further, and MuseScore 4 improves it further, in particular by supporting pretty much all the screen readers now. It used to be we only supported NVDA on Windows. Now we support JAWS and Narrator on Windows. We support VoiceOver on Mac, and we support Orca on Linux, which is essentially all of the major screen readers all work. And I think other ones would probably work as well, but these are the ones we actually test with. So now let me talk about so I'm going to try to use the keyboard as much as possible here. So to get to the menus, and it's going to be Alt-E. And by the way, anytime I say Alt, I'm on Windows here, and on my other machine is a Linux machine. Alt is the key that we use on Linux and on Windows. On a Mac, it's going to be Option. So anytime I give you a shortcut with Alt, substitute Option on Mac, I think. So in any case, to access the menus, it's going to be Alt-E.
Undo Control
and that opens
+Z,
the edit menu.
Alt plus backspace.
I'm now going to press the up arrow to move up to cycle to get all the way down to the bottom. That's a quick little shortcut there.
Preferences.
Or you can press P, which is the mnemonic for preferences. This opens as the preferences window. what I want to do now is I want to get to the appearance section here. And if I just start moving cursors
Check for
around,
language updates button.
this dialog has two sections to it, and we can see I'm on the right-hand section of it here, where it's checking for language updates and so forth. I want to get to the left-hand section where there's a list of all the different types of preferences. So I'm going to press Shift-Tab.
General not selected.
And this moves me to the left column. Now I can start pressing the down arrow.
Appearance not selected.
And I'm on Appearance. So now I can press Tab to get back over to the right-hand section. No?
Preferences, not responding.
Not responding. Okay. So that's interesting. MuseScore 3 had a dark theme, but it did not have inversion. You had to rely on your operating system for that.
MuseScore Café window.
All right. So
preferences window. Preferences.
I'm in the preferences now. Now I can start.
Red 92%.
I want to get back up to
blank.
where
Themes panel.
The dark theme is. So I'm going to select the dark
radio
theme
button not checked.
And press space. And now I have the dark theme. That's useful. Also, for many people, you might find
blank. Accent color.
These. Let's see.
Themes
how do I
panel.
get? Oh, there we go. Down arrow.
Box not.
Down arrow gets me to these boxes. It says follow system theme.
Enable high contrast checkbox not checked.
And enable high contrast.
Space.
When you check that, you get this. You get these outlines around all of the clickable buttons and so forth, which can also help for people with low vision.
UI colors panel.
There's also all of these different settings for the colors of what's on the screen. So for people with different forms of color blindness or color sensitivities or just general color perception issues, you can customize colors. Moving down further, though, I'm going to move
panel
to this appearance panel and then
body text size.
The text size. And I can turn this thing up so that I can have large fonts. I'll go up to 18-point font. So if anyone is watching this with low vision, you'll hopefully be able to follow things a little better from here on out in this demonstration here. And then what Ariana was talking about, if I keep going,
panel, invert score checkbox.
There's a checkbox to invert the score. And when I press that, notice how the score itself is white with black printing.
Space.
Now it's black with white printing. So again, depending on people's particular vision acuity, you might find any of these to be useful, and you have customizable, the ability to customize all this. So I hit enter. Ooh, enter just toggled that button. I need to move down to the OK button. Now press enter.
MuseScore Café window Muse.
So, now we can, see our score in a format where, again, for certain types of visual impairments, this is going to work better. Right now, the score is being displayed at 100% zoom, meaning it's the same size on screen as it is, would be if I printed. If I took up a piece of paper right now and held it up to my screen, it would be the same size. But often, if you are printing music that if you know you are printing it for someone with low vision, you're going to want the music on the page bigger.
Café, not responding.
Yeah, I don't know why I keep getting that little interruption in there, but whatever. That might be some interaction with NVDA that I'm not aware of. I haven't experienced it before, though. So, if you are printing so this is about the user interface, making it bigger and higher contrast. But if you're printing music for people or yourself with vision issues, you want to make the music bigger. Let me show you how to do that. I'm going to go to Alt-O, which is the format menu,
style,
and then go down to page settings.
Page settings.
And then open the page settings dialog.
Letter/NCA. Page settings dialog.
This dialog controls the size of the page, but also the size of your staff. So I'm going to tab into the scaling area.
Cancel button, enter.
Ooh.
Page size, width, height. Portrait radio button not checked. Two-sided scaling grouping.
Here we go.
Staff space. SP spin button 1.700.
So the staff space setting is literally setting the size of staff spaces. In other words, how far apart your staff lines are. This is what almost everything is scaled to in MuseScore. In other words, whatever size you pick for the size of the staff space, other things scale accordingly. Text gets bigger if we make this bigger. Your notes get bigger, your clefs get bigger, your dynamics get bigger, your articulations get bigger. Everything in MuseScore, with very few exceptions, will scale according to this, the staff space. So 1.7 is not actually the default. It's a little smaller than the default. I had I had customized this to be able to fit things on a page better. But the default is 1.75 millimeters. And if you think about a staff, it's four staff spaces tall. So 1.75 works out to 7 millimeters for the total size of the staff. Depending on whatever vision issues you have going on, you might want instead of 7 millimeters for the full staff, you might want it to be 20 millimeters, or it could be whatever size you want. So if I type 5 into this box right
5.
now,
Unselected.
and then move over, I think now I can press OK.
MuseScore Café window, MuseScore Café, MuseScore Café.
So now what we're going to see here is that the music itself is much bigger, and it's probably only going to fit one measure on each page now, and it's actually going to have a hard time with that because I probably made it too big, and I'll probably have to adjust from there. But the point is, you can make the music itself bigger that way. Now, if you are working with MuseScore with low vision, but you're creating music for people who prefer a standard staff size, then instead of doing what I just did, just not responding again. Instead of doing what I just did to make the music bigger, you can simply zoom in on screen, and that will make things bigger. So instead of what I just did, let me undo that with Control Z. I can use the controls at the bottom of the screen here, or I can use the keyboard shortcut Control Plus to zoom in. And then you can see things on screen as big as you want, but it will still print at whatever the defined standard size is. So these are some of the things that we have going on to help with low vision. And I want to take a look at my chat over here just to see what else is going on. So Marla, I know Marla, you had mentioned that something was not working with this, but hopefully maybe that demonstration helped. And if not, definitely start a new thread and describe in more details, maybe show me a screenshot of what you're doing. But this, I did go through the process here, and hopefully you can see that this does work. It works on Windows, and I've also verified that it works on Linux. I don't have a Mac to test with. So Ariana's asking about affecting the individual parts. When you change the size in a score, it only affects the size of the score. If you want to make the parts bigger, you can do that. Like say your alto sax player is vision impaired and you want to make just their part bigger. Well, I can view the alto sax part and also go to Format, Page Settings.
Scaling.
And in the interest of time, I'm going to click here and just change this setting to 3, say.
3. Okay.
And
MuseScore Café Altos.
Now the alto part is using larger print, whereas others, will still print at the standard size. Now, if your entire ensemble is made of visually impaired musicians, or if any setting that you make in your page settings you want to apply to all the parts, you can do that as well.
Style.
In Format, Page Settings, you're going to want to click the button that says Apply to All Parts, and it's down there next to the OK button. If you press Tab often enough, you'll eventually find your way down to that Apply to All Parts button. So the Apply to All Parts button takes whatever settings you've made in this dialog and applies it to all the parts. So you'd make that setting within one part, and then you can say Apply to All. So what I want to do now is switch back to talking more about using with Screen Reader and how you can create a score without any visual reference at all. And I could try to blank my screen so we all have to just hear what's
Page
happening,
settings.
because I
Not
know there's a number of people that watching this probably right now. There's who are either completely blind or have visual impairments, as well as others who are fully sighted. And sometimes it's fun to put everyone in the same boat by having the screen go dark. And I'm going to actually do a little bit of that, or perhaps more than a little, tomorrow in the music masterclass. But for here, I do want to keep the screen visible so that people who do have full sight or enough sight can see what I'm doing and how it relates to what's going on with the screen reader. And this might help you then help other users in the future. So what I'm going to do is
MuseScore
create a new
Café Alto
score,
Sax
and
window
I'm going to go
MuseScore
through
Café.
the process of creating a new score and enter some notes into it, enter some markings into it, and just do a really quick version of that. I want to, again, just catch up on the chat here. So Braille, okay. So so Dave, the thing is, if you want to try on the Mac, you're going to want to go to Edit, Preferences, and actually on Mac,
Undo
Preferences is not
Control+C.
under Edit, right?
Alt.
I think it's in the
Preferences.
Application menu or something like that. But get to the Preferences, go to Appearance,
Appearance not selected.
and then try checking where it says towards the bottom there, Invert Score, and tell me if it gives you this same thing, black background with white staff and white notes. It's supposed to. It works for me. As far as I know, it works on Mac. I've never heard anyone report that it didn't, other than when Marla was saying she was having trouble. And Marla, I don't know if you're on Mac or on another system. But in any case, that's what we're interested in, is whether that Invert Score option gives you black paper with white printing on it. So what I'm going to do is, okay. Oh, and I see some. I want to keep interacting in the chat as well. So MuseScore has Braille output, and I want to show you just really quickly how to do that, because I can't really tell you much about it, other than it's amazing that this happened. So when I said that MuseScore has had some screen reader support since MuseScore 2, that work was done by a college student named Andre, who implemented it as part of the Google Summer of Code project, where Google basically pays college students to work on open source software. And so we decided that we would really like to see some screen reader support. I worked as his mentor and helped him implement screen reader support for MuseScore 2. And then we had another student actually who improved that support for MuseScore 3 and gave us that alt left and alt right shortcut, which are huge. And her name, oh gosh, I should remember her name, because it was actually the first woman who had participated in MuseScore source. But it was, yeah, I'm sorry. I am so sorry. I don't remember. I do not remember your name. But we've had that screen reader support for a while, but then the person, Andre, who did the MuseScore 2 screen reader support, during when COVID kind of first hit and everyone was sort of in lockdown trying to figure out what they're going to do with their lives, he decided he was going to implement Braille support for MuseScore. So you can now, in any score you want, go to the file menu, so Alt F, and then I'll cursor down to export and open the export dialog.
Select all, format, PDF file combo box.
So the format here is set to PDF right now, but if I open that combo box with the space bar,
PDF file, Braille not selected.
Braille is at the bottom of that list, so I hit up arrow to get to Braille right away, and it will actually export a Braille file. Now it's not perfect. It's the first version of Braille support. I'm told it's very good for the notation. But it does not have text at all, so it's going to be missing pretty much all the text you might expect, and that includes things like lyrics. I think it includes dynamics, although I'm not positive about that. But I'm told that the notation itself is extremely high quality as far as how it converts to Braille. Your other option for creating Braille from MuseScore is to export to Music XML format in the same dialog here, right above it.
Music XML not selected.
Right, so Music XML is another format you can export to, and if you export to Music XML, there's a number of online converters that will convert from Music XML to Braille. Now there's also Braille display devices. Like right now, when every time we hear that screen reader read something, there's Braille displays that will have the screen reader, instead of reading it out loud, display it on a Braille display. It's like these pins that come up to give you the raised dot effect. And then also Braille keyboards where you can type. So anything that you can do with keyboard shortcuts, you could also do using a Braille keyboard. So the Braille file format it's ASCII Braille. It uses it's just different numeric codes that Braille embossers know how to turn into the actual Braille pattern. So there is once you've created a Braille file, you can send it to anyone who has a Braille embosser, and they will then be able to basically print it as Braille. There's also online software that can display Braille files with the pattern of dots visibly on screen, if that's useful. Or if you have one of these Braille display devices, it will. When I'm not describing
Export,
this thing well, but it's a display that has like a horizontal bar with these pins that pop up, and they're like activated by, I don't know, magnets or motors or whatever. And so it will actually pop up the pins so that when you put your fingers on them, you're essentially reading the Braille. So that file can be used as input to one of those Braille display devices as well. So, yes, there we go. So Dave, when I was talking about invert score, that was definitely MuseScore 4. That's a new feature in MuseScore 4. MuseScore 3 didn't have the invert score feature. It also didn't have this high contrast theme, but it did have a dark mode. But everything else that I'm showing is new with MuseScore 4. Support for VoiceOver is new. VoiceOver is the Mac screen reader, is new with MuseScore 4. Support for Braille is new for MuseScore 4. Support for the high contrast theme and for inverted scores are all new with MuseScore 4. So when we talk about MuseScore 4 having greatly improved accessibility, those are some of the things that we're talking about. So it's certainly possible that I'm missing things here in the chat, and for that I'm going to apologize, but I want to keep going. And by all means, if there's something really important, feel free to repeat it so that I can find again what I can see. If something is scrolled past and I missed it, just retype it so that I can see it again. What I'm going to do
window.
is get out of here,
MuseScore
and I'm going to
Café
create a new score and just walk through that process a little bit in the time that's left here. So Control N or Command N on Mac is the shortcut to create a new score. And, when you first start MuseScore, you're on the home page and there's a new score button you can press, but Control N works there as well. Now, when you create a new score, you have two choices. We can either create from template, or if I press the cursor keys,
choose instruments radio button not checked.
You'll see there's choose instruments,
create from template radio button checked,
and create from template. These are the two main options in this dialog. Now, I posted earlier in the community and in the MuseScore handbook, I've tried to post this as many places as I could, tutorials that walk you through the process of choosing instruments, because it's a little complicated. So rather than go through that right now, I'm going to use the create from template option, which I didn't show in the tutorial. So if I want the create from template option, I'm going to press tab.
General not selected.
And so what I want to do is describe this dialog to you and describe a bit about how MuseScore uses shortcuts. So there's a couple of different ways that programs can use accessibility shortcuts. The kind of old style traditional way is having the tab key move through every single control in the dialog box. And when I say old style, I mean I remember back in the 80s and the 90s. More so actually in the 90s. I don't think I did much development of graphical user interfaces, but certainly in the 90s I did, and getting the tab order set correctly, where when you press tab, every time you press tab, the order that it goes through the buttons. This is always a big deal and always kind of something you had to work on manually as a programmer. but the idea would be that you would just press tab and it would move you through every button, every control in a window one by one. The thing is that as user interfaces have become more complex, that model has become less viable. So what we're seeing, and I don't know when this trend started, to be honest, but what we're seeing now is some programs that are using a hierarchical scheme in which instead of tab moving through all the controls, F6 is going to move through kind of the highest level, like from one panel of a window to the next panel of a window. And then within a panel, tab will move between one group of related buttons and another group of related buttons. And then within a group, the cursor keys will move. So instead of tab being your one-stop shop to take you through every single button, it's going to be that hierarchy. The advantage of the hierarchy is now it doesn't take as long. Like if you're on one button and you're trying to get to another button all the way across the other end of the screen, you don't have to press tab 30 times. It's quicker to get places. But it does mean that you're going to have to spend a little longer exploring the user interface to get used to it. So what I'm going to be doing here is trying to explain as we're doing things. Ariana is asking about Finale, and so yeah, Finale, 1988, late 80s is when it came out. I was not in the music software world at all. I was working for Hewlett-Packard on programming tools. But the question about why MuseScore is open in separate windows is a valid one, and it does relate to accessibility here because it means now that we're navigating multiple windows. There's the main reason why different scores are in different windows in MuseScore 4 is so that you can have different sound profiles. You can use Muse sounds with one score, use VST instruments with another score, use sound fonts with another, mix and match between them in another score, and every time you change scores, you want the sounds that go with that score. MuseScore 3 didn't allow that. MuseScore 3 forced all the scores that you had loaded to use whatever sounds were loaded into MuseScore 3 at that time. You couldn't use different sounds in different scores, at least not without changing the sound fonts every time you changed scores. So when all you have are sound fonts, that was a pain in the butt, but people learned to live with it. Once we introduced VST and Muse sounds into the picture, though, that simply was not viable anymore. It is just not viable to only have one set of sounds for the whole program and then have every single score have to use those same sounds. It's just not viable in a world where there's sound fonts and VST and Muse sounds. So the only technical way to do that is to put them into separate, what are called instances. And so that's why they're in separate windows, because an instance corresponds to a window. And so what this means is to navigate between scores, you're going to use Alt-Tab. Like here's my new score here. If I press Alt-Tab.
MuseScore Café Alto Sax row 1
I guess I
column
don't
2
have
2
it.
of
Oh,
10.
let me keep
Live chat
Alt-Tabbing.
Google. A little piece row 2 column 1.
There we go.
A little piece window, a little piece, a little piece.
So this is another window here that I got to with Alt-Tab. Alt-Tab is the standard keyboard shortcut for moving between open windows. If I press it again, it just moves back to the window I was just in. So let me walk you through this dialogue a little bit now. What we heard was, I think if you remember, I'm going to press Shift-Tab to move back to the radio buttons.
Create from template radio button checked.
Now I'm going to press Tab to move into the dialogue.
General not selected.
So this dialogue has two columns. The first column is for categories of templates, of which general is one. I'm going to walk down this list a little bit. So there's general.
Choral not selected. Chamber music not. Solo not. Jazz not. Popular not. Band and percussion. Orchestral not selected.
So those are the different categories. If we want to create, say, a string quartet, well, that's chamber music. So I'm going to move back to where the chamber music was.
Band, pop, jazz, solo, chamber music not selected.
Now, for people who are new to using screen readers, you notice that as I press cursor keys, I'm interrupting the screen reader. Screen readers will stop reading when you move on to another control. And my experience is that most people who are accustomed to using screen readers are very accustomed to doing that and will just listen to the first syllable of a control that's being read to know that's the one I want or that's not the one I want, and then we'll just move on to the next one. So I am, rather than letting every single control read fully, I'm letting enough of it read for that I think people who are listening to the screen reader and are accustomed to screen readers will be understanding. So I've now reached chamber music. What I need to do now is activate chamber music to load the corresponding templates into the second column. So I'm going to press space.
Space.
This is essentially the same as having clicked chamber music. When you're navigating, you're not selecting anything, but now I've pressed space. This has basically activated it. So now that I have selected the category, I'm going to press tab to move to the next grouping. Tab.
Search edit blank.
So we are now in a search box, and this allows you to search for templates, but we're not going to do that. We already found that we're in the chamber music area. I'm now just going to scroll. I'm going to cursor down until I find string quartet.
String quartet not selected.
Well, there we go. It's the very first one. I'm going to keep going just so you can hear some of the others.
Wind quartet, wind quintet, saxophone quartet, brass quintet not select. Search edit blank.
And now I'm back up to the top. So
string quartet not selected.
So string quartet is what I want. And what I'm going to do now is press space to make sure I've activated that. Now, in principle, if I hit done right now, if I hit enter right now, it would say I'm done. I don't want to be done. I do want to get to the next screen. So I'm going to tab.
Zoom in button.
There's a zoom in.
Cancel button.
Okay, yeah, there's zoom in and zoom out buttons that are just for a visible preview of the template you've selected. But now we're at this bottom row. So I pressed tab to get to that bottom row of buttons, and it said cancel. When I press tab again,
create from template radio button
notice
checked.
We're back at the top. This is one of these things that I say is new about how MuseScore 4 is interpreting this. Tab doesn't get me from cancel to next to done. Those are the three buttons in that row. The cursor keys are. So I'm going to shift tab to get back to that row of buttons.
Cancel button.
So the cancel button is in a group with two other buttons, next and done, and the cursor keys are what's going to move me between them.
Next button. Done button.
All right, I want to go back to next.
Next button.
By pressing left. So this idea that when you reach a group of controls using tab, you're going to have to kind of do some exploring using the cursor keys to find out, are there other elements in this same group? Or pay attention to my tutorials where I'm describing this to you. But at some point it becomes kind of intuitive. Anytime you hear a cancel button, you know there's an OK button or a next button or a done button or some other button next to it, because dialog boxes don't typically have cancel and nothing else. Although I guess that could happen. So, so Christopher is pointing out that, yeah, there's definitely inconsistencies in certain things. So that is for sure, and there's issues with how this hierarchy of controls works in general, like I think in any program, but there's certainly inconsistencies in how MuseScore has applied it. Like there are certain places where I feel like the next screen we're going to get to, I feel like is one where most people would say this should be tab and not cursor keys. So let's go to the next screen. So we're on the next screen, and apparently it didn't read anything. I think other screen readers do read something, unless I've somehow killed NVDA. Did I kill NVDA?
A little.
No.
MuseScore 4 window. MuseScore window. MuseScore.
All right. So we are now on a window for additional score information. And when I pointed out that NVDA did not read anything, this is something you're going to find is little differences between all these screen readers. NVDA versus JAWS versus Narrator versus VoiceOver versus Orca. Different screen readers are going to read different information because the way it's presented to screen reader can differ according to what kind of information is being presented, and different screen readers have different levels of verbosity and different bugs, and MuseScore has bugs that affect different screen readers differently than others, right? So there's all sorts of different reasons why one screen reader might read something differently than another. But anyhow, I'm just take you through this dialog. Right now, if I press tab,
Score Options panel, Key Signature C major button.
There's a button to select key signatures. I'll press tab again.
General Score Info panel, Title Edit blank.
This moved me to a panel. So notice it used the word panel. we're not 100% consistent about that, but that's one of the things to be aware of. If I press Shift Tab again,
Score options panel, key signature C major button.
so it's a panel with buttons on it. When I press Tab,
General score info panel, title edit blank.
it took me to a different panel, right? And so that the fact that we were on one panel and there was a button, but then pressing Tab took me to another panel, that's my clue that there's probably other buttons on that first panel. So I'm going to Shift Tab to get back to the first panel.
Score options panel, key signature C major button.
So Tab took me to the other panel, so this tells me, well, I must be cursor keys that are going to get me through these buttons. And yes, there's still, things that could be cleaned up about how all these things work, but it's complicated to try to figure out one design that works perfectly. So this is what was developed over the course of several months of consulting and so forth. So we are always open to further feedback on this. So we're on the key signatures button right now. Let me use the cursor key now.
Time signature 4/4 button.
And then
Tempo quarter note 120 button.
And then
Measures 32 measures. No
So-
pickup button.
So these are buttons that let you control the beginning key signature for your score, control the beginning time signature score, control the beginning tempo, control how many measures. Now when I press Tab,
General score info panel, title edit blank.
so here's where we can enter a title, and I can say
A-E.
hello. And now if I press Tab again,
Cancel button.
it takes me to the buttons. But I know there's more than title to enter. So I'm going to press Shift Tab to get back to title.
General score info panel, title edit selected hello.
So now that I know I'm in this panel and Tab takes me to another panel, I want to find the other controls in here. Again, it's going to be cursor keys. In this case, not
H.
left and right, because left and right
L. O.
do their usual thing in a text field, move a character at a time. Instead, it's going to be up and down.
Composer
So
edit
down
blank.
moves me to the composer.
Subtitle edit blank.
Down again moves me to subtitle.
Lyricist edit blank.
Down again to lyricist.
Copyright edit blank.
Down again, right? So in any case, that's how you can enter enter that information. Now, the actual mechanics of filling in the key signature, the time signature, and all the tempo and all that, I go through that in the tutorial. So I'm not going to go through it again here. But I did want to kind of walk through the process so you could see what's happening. Now I want to get to the done button. So I'll press Tab.
Cancel button.
And I know that next to that cancel button, there's going to be other buttons. So I'm going to press right.
Back button.
And again.
Done button.
There we go. And press Enter.
Hello window hello. Score hello panel. Staff 1.
So Dave.
Violin I. Bar line single bar line.
So Dave, that the invert should be at the very bottom of that dialog. So let me show you what it should look like. If I go to Edit,
Cut control.
Preferences, Appearance,
Preferences.
and scroll
Appearance
down
not
to the
selected.
very bottom. There it is, at the very bottom, a checkbox, Invert Score. And again, MuseScore 4 only. This is new with MuseScore 4. So that's the button you want, Invert Score. It's after, so you'll see high contrast themes, UI colors, appearance, background, and at the very bottom is the Invert Score button. Now, does that show up if you're not in the dark theme? Maybe.
High
No,
contrast
it's
themes
there.
panel.
It's available
White
even in a
radio
light theme.
button
I'm going to
checked.
go back to dark because that was shocking.
Black radio. Hello
So-
window hello.
That button should be present. If that button's not present on Mac, that's definitely a problem, right? So I have now created this score. When I press Done, it created the score. So what I want to do now is start navigating it. So I'm going to use my friend Alt-Right. I don't know what is selected in the score right now, if anything. So I'm actually going to press Alt-Left to try to get to the beginning of the score. I think the initial bar line of the first staff is selected, but I'm going to press Alt-Left to try to get all the way to the beginning.
Composer / arranger edit composer / arranger.
Yeah, so there's a title frame here that has composer information that I never entered, so it's just kind of a placeholder there. So I'm in that title area, and I don't care about that, so I'm going to press Alt-Right again.
Staff 1. Violin I. Bar line single bar line. Measure 1 beat 1.
So you can tell we're on the violin staff, violin I. It's violin Roman numeral 1 is what it really is. And it's on the bar line at the start of that staff. If I press Alt-Right again.
Treble clef, measure 1 beat 1.
Notice it didn't tell us what staff it's on because we haven't changed staves. It's already told us we're on staff 1, the violin 1 staff. So as long as I only use Alt-Left and Alt-Right, I'm staying on this staff, and so I don't need to be told that information over and over again. We do try to optimize things like that. Alt-Right again.
Key signature C major, a minor, measure 1 beat 1.
So there's no visible key signature because C major doesn't have a visible key signature, but it's still selectable via Alt-Left and Alt-Right, which is also a very useful thing for sighted users who want to be able to select that C major key signature, so you can do things like turn off courtesy key signatures for it, access the properties for it, and all sorts of other things that you might need to access that thing that you can't actually otherwise click. So Alt-Left and Alt-Right can be very useful shortcuts for getting to things that are basically not clickable for whatever reason. Alt-Right again.
Time signature 4/4 time, measure 1 beat 1.
And so there's a time signature. Now Alt-Right again.
Rest measure, measure 1 beat 1.
So we are in, it says rest measure. That means it's a measure rest. It's going to say rest quarter or rest half or rest eighth. It's going to say rest and then the duration. So rest measure means it's a measure rest, meaning this is an empty measure. There is a measure rest. So I see Dave has posted a picture here. You haven't scrolled down, Dave. You need to scroll down. So, so Dave, yeah, scroll down in that dialog. As I said, the invert score is all the way at the bottom. You got a lot more controls below what you're showing. So, so in any case, we're on that measure rest right now, and I could keep going Alt-Right.
Bar line single bar line, measure 2 beat 1.
Right, so this is a bar line, a single bar line as opposed to a double bar line, and it's in measure 2 because the bar line will read as if it belongs. The bar line separates measure 1 and measure 2, but when you select a bar line, it'll tell you the bar line, it'll tell you the measure number of what follows it. So that just be aware that that's going to be what happens. If I press Alt-Right again,
rest measure, measure 2 beat 1.
And again,
bar line single bar line, measure 3 beat 1.
And so on. The score is empty, right? We haven't added anything to it. So it's not going to have anything interesting to read other than rests and bar lines, right? So let's enter some notes. I want to go back to the beginning here. So I'm going to use Control Left.
Blank.
Oh, actually, that doesn't work if a bar line selected. I got to go Alt-Right.
Rest
Alt-Left.
measure. Bar line rest measure. Measure 1 beat 1.
So I've used Alt-Left to get back to that initial rest. And now I want to enter some notes in here. So I'll press N to enter note input mode.
N. Note input mode. Rest measure. Measure 1 beat 1.
So Dave, I'm not sure what's getting in the way of scrolling, but it should be the scroll wheel that scrolls, or whatever pointing device you have. The standard scroll things should work to scroll there. I think also if you hover, let me try to do that. Alt Edit Preferences. Let me see if I move my mouse to the side.
Window Preferences.
Oops, I need to go to the Appearance panel.
Appearance.
If I move Appearance, yeah, if you move your cursor to the side, you can actually see a scroll bar, but you shouldn't ever need to use a scroll bar, right? 2-finger swipe of a touchpad, scroll wheel on a mouse, etc. Whatever you normally use, I'm 2-finger swiping here, or you can actually move over and drag the scroll bar if your scroll wheel is broken or you don't have a touchpad. But 2-finger swipe is usually how that works on a touchpad, and other devices have their own scroll thing. So that's how you scroll, and that's a useful thing to know because that's also how we scroll scores,
hello,
right?
Window, hello,
if
hello.
I want to scroll this score, 2-finger swipe, how I scroll. So, I'm in note input mode. Now let's talk about actually entering notes. I pressed N to enter note input mode. If you can't remember what mode you're in, press Escape. It'll return you to normal mode.
Score hello panel, note input mode, staff 1, violin I, rest measure, measure 1 beat 1.
So notice it said note input mode. When I press Escape,
normal mode,
it moves me to normal mode.
Measure 1 beat 1.
And again,
N, note input mode.
So it's going to tell you what mode you're in, right? So now I can start entering notes. So what I'm going to do is just enter first few notes of Mary Had a Little Lamb. So the way we're going to do this is first select duration, then enter pitches. And all of this is done with keyboard shortcuts. 4, 5, and 6 for eighth, quarter, half is always how I describe getting started. 4, 5, 6, like the middle row of a numeric keypad. 4, 5, 6, eighth, quarter, half. So if I want to enter quarter notes, it's going to be 5 for quarter.
5.
And now I can type my notes.
E. Note E5 quarter, measure 1 beat 1. D. Note D5 quarter, measure 1 beat 2.
And then
C. Note C5 quarter, measure 1 beat 3.
And then
D. Note D5 quarter, measure 1 beat 4.
And then
E. Note E5 quarter, measure 2 beat 1.
Notice it went on to the next measure, right? Every time I entered a note, it reads the pitch of the note I just entered, and it plays the note. The playback was a little weird because the NVDA kept interrupting the playback, and that doesn't normally happen, but for whatever reason it was here, so apologize for that little glitch. Great, Dave, glad you got it going there. I see your picture there, and yeah, so it does seem like it works on Mac to invert the score. So I've entered and it said measure 2, so I know I'm in measure 2. Let me keep entering notes, another E.
E. Note E5 quarter, measure 2 beat 2.
Now I want to enter a half note, so 4, 5, 6 for eighth, quarter, half. I want a half note, so it's 6.
6.
And then I can type my E.
E. Note E5 half, measure 2 beat 3.
So I have now entered the first bunch of notes of Mary Had a Little Lamb. Is that Mary Had a Little Lamb? Yes, it is. Think about that for a second. To move, now if I want to enter, that's just the violin 1 part. Let's move down a staff with Alt down.
Staff 2, violin 2, rest measure, measure 2 beat 1.
So we're in measure 2. I want to go back to measure 1, and I'm going to use Control left then.
Rest measure, measure 1 beat 1.
So now I can enter a violin 2 note, and I'm going to keep this real simple. I'm going to make it a whole note G. 7.
7.
For 4, 5, 6 for eighth, quarter, half. Well, then longer durations are larger numbers. So if half is 6, whole is 7. So 7,
7.
And then a G.
G. Note G4 whole, measure 1 beat 1.
Now I'm going to move down to the viola staff. Alt down again.
Staff 3, viola, rest measure, measure 1 beat 1.
I'm in measure 1, so I'm going to enter a note for the viola, and I think what I'm going to do is, just keep this real simple. 7 for whole note, and C.
C. Note C4 whole, measure 1 beat 1.
And now Alt down again to get to the cello.
Staff 4, violoncello, rest measure, measure 1 beat 1.
And 7 to enter a whole note
7.
C here also.
C. Note C3 whole, measure 1 beat 1.
Now notice it said note C3. That's what it entered, and yeah, it didn't necessarily play it as I entered it because NVDA is sort of interrupting it a little bit. But let me press the right arrow and left arrow again.
Rest
There it is.
Note C3 whole.
So that time, you got to hear it. Well, maybe that's not the C you wanted. Maybe we want that C. So I'm going to use Control down to change that octave. And on Mac, anytime I say just like anytime I say Alt, it turns into Option. Anytime I say Control, it turns into Command. So Control down takes it down to the low C on the cello. So I've now entered these notes. I can press Escape.
Normal mode. Note C2 whole, measure 1 beat 1.
And now that I'm in normal mode, I can press space and it will play.
Space.
And it wasn't very impressive. But when you first start playback of a score with Muse sounds enabled, sometimes it takes a note or two before it fully engages, and that's kind of a drag. I absolutely agree, but it is how it is. So I'm going to press Control Home to get back to the beginning of the score, and just try to press space again.
Bar line. Space.
And so there's, there is the beginning of my score. Now, I did see a question here about something about copying or something that I want to try to address. Christopher is mentioning that The mixer is mostly workable. Yeah, the mixer in MuseScore 3 was essentially not accessible at all. In MuseScore 4, it is, but it's awkward. And as far as getting to the effects, I've never tried to do that because unfortunately, actually, my Windows system does have effects. So I am a little curious about this. I'm going to close the mixer and reopen it. Let's see, I want to press F10, right? And then F10 again to reopen it because that should put the cursor in that field. I'll press Tab, and NVDA is not reading.
Violin I sound violin 1.
Okay, there we go.
Solo button.
Interesting. Press Tab again. Yeah, I haven't experimented with using the mixer with a screen reader yet, so I don't want to have to do that live here. And fumble there. So I'm going to leave that one and try to figure that out later and maybe do a demo on that separately. I think I see the question now that I was thinking about copying and pasting, and it was Bob asking about copying from window and then pasting into another. Absolutely. So for instance, I'm going to press N to make sure. I use N to toggle node input mode as a way of sort of establishing which window even has keyboard focus. Normally, I would just click. But if I'm trying to do this with keyboard only, I find N to toggle node input mode is often an interesting way to force the focus into the score. Because I was just in the mixer. Actually, I need to press Escape to get focus like nowhere. And now N.
N. Note input mode. Note E5 quarter. Measure 1 beat 1.
All right. Let's say I want to select
mode.
those two
Note
measures
E5
and
quarter.
copy them somewhere else.
Measure 1 beat 1.
I'm going to use Shift Control Right to extend that selection a full measure.
Note D5 quarter. Measure 1 beat 4. Selected range selection starts measure 1 beat 1 ends measure 1 beat 4.
So you hear that told me that it has beats 1 through 4 selected in measure 1. Control Right to select the second measure.
Note E5 half. Measure 2 beat 3. Selected range selection starts measure 1 beat 1 ends measure 2 beat 3.
So now it tells me that it's selected, everything up until the note on beat 3. It's not it's telling you the last note of the selection is the note on beat 3. Control C to copy. And apparently it didn't read anything, but I know I pressed it. Now Alt-Tab to move to another score.
A little piece row 1, a little piece window, a little piece, a little piece.
And now let me again use the same trick of pressing N to force the focus somewhere.
N. Note input mode, N. Normal mode.
Now I can press Control V, and it just pasted Mary Had a Little Lamb into my little piece. So yes, absolutely copy and paste between windows works, and it works really well. And Alt-Tab is really kind of very convenient for that because you can flip back and forth between two pieces really quickly. And also, if you have multiple windows open, you can use Alt-Tab to just move between all of them. You can put them on a separate desktop if you want to keep all your MuseScore windows separate from other windows. So there's sort of different ways of organizing how you might think about things. So Christopher, I'm gonna check out more about the mixer, right after this, I think. So I'm gonna try to make sure I've addressed. We've been here for an hour. I know it was off to a sort of a rocky start technically because. Live TV, what are you going to do? I do want to, though, just check and see if there's any other particular things I mentioned. So if there's any other questions that I missed in here, I would love to be able to answer. So let's see. Copying. You can buy black printer paper. Interesting. Wow, is that really a thing? Oh, and then print white. So printing white on black would be perhaps difficult. Yeah, I mean, you can actually make you could make a black graphic, and then, I don't even know how you would do that really, actually. Yeah, how to print music like that would be tricky for sure. I am going to tell you about one other interesting tool since I'm scrolling through the chat and I'm remembering the conversations about Braille. There's this awesome utility called Braille Music Notator. Braille Music Notator by a guy named Toby Rush. It is an incredible tool that will display Braille music on screen in a way that will show you the dots, but if you toggle a button, it'll show you the meaning of those dots. Like there's a particular dot pattern to represent quarter note G, for instance. The same dot pattern represents the duration of the note and the pitch of the note. They're kind of combined into a single cell. And so with one setting, it'll show you the dot patterns, but you toggle this button and now it'll show you quarter note G. And so you can kind of learn Braille, and then you can enter Braille by entering the quarter note G. You know, you don't have to know Braille to use Braille Music Notator. You can enter music into Braille Music Notator by knowing the pitches and knowing just the basics of how Braille works without having to know the specifics of which dot patterns are which things. It's mind-blowingly great for creating Braille music. And you can take the Braille file that came out of MuseScore and load it into Braille Music Notator as your starting point, and then use Braille Music Notator to add anything that was missing and edit and so forth. So it's an incredible tool, and anyone who's interested in working with Braille music, if you haven't checked it out, it's great. Now, I'm not going to say that it's like this pro quality thing for producing publication quality thing, publication quality Braille, but for finding your way around Braille music and getting a sense of what it's about, it's really quite amazing. So I think maybe other than the fact that we were waiting, people were waiting to get in, what I'm going to assume that I've answered all the questions because I don't see any new ones at the bottom or anyone repeating things. So as far as the multiple windows goes, Mac OS is very awkward in this way. I absolutely agree, because on most operating systems, and by most by most operating systems I mean Windows, Chrome OS, and Linux, with all the different window managers exist. Let me show you what it normally looks like. What you normally see is a single icon, and then you click it, and you see either thumbnails of all your windows, or you see a list of the open files. But you normally, on most operating systems, see a single icon and all the windows listed underneath that. Mac OS doesn't have a concept of that. So on Mac OS, you get separate icons for every open window. So that is highly unfortunate, and we are trying to find a way to work around that limitation. When I say we, I have no insight into any of that, but the programmers, the MuseScore programmers who do use Mac and have some insight into how to work around those sorts of limitations are definitely working on it, because it's definitely something that we are aware of is awkward on Mac, because it doesn't have that kind of basic feature of being able to group icons into one, because it's just not something that's part of how Mac programs are normally intended to be structured. But it's very much the way most Windows programs, most Linux programs are structured, with this kind of arrangement. It's just Mac doesn't have a concept of it. So trying to find a solution to it. So far, no one really has any great ideas, but it is definitely being worked on. So, that said, I think I'm going to wrap up here. I want to thank everyone for being here. Thanks for the comments. Thanks for the questions. I will post. If you haven't seen the tutorials, I suppose I should have posted them into the chat. But go to go into. Let me
Google Chrome for
just do a quick
MuseScore Café and stream.
No, I'm not going to end the stream yet. What I want to do is go to the accessibility page here in the community and post you a link to the thread. Oh, good. You just posted the thing about mixer window and shift clicking and so forth. So great. I got some fun stuff to look forward to here, but I want to post. Oh, I can't do it in here. So anyhow, just go to the community, and because that's right, I don't have chat working on this system
community
here.
Suggestion.
Click accessibility here for the accessibility space within the community. You'll find those tutorials in there. Let me make sure I've pinned them.
Menu button collapse submenu.
Pin to sidebar. There we go. I've now...
Checkbox not checked button.
Come on. Pinned. There we go.
I have created a
So, so there you go. So now you can access those
Not
accessibility tutorials to learn more about the accessibility within MuseScore. And I will get to your questions there, Christopher. And so
MuseScore
I'm going to go back to my MuseScore Café.
MuseScore Café Altos.
And wakey, wakey. Come on. Computer's going to be this way. I might turn it down and just talk. And then if it decides to come back, I will we'll hear the music. But I want to thank everyone again for being here. Thanks for the discussion. Thanks for the questions. This whole topic of accessibility is a huge one, and that's why I have these tutorials. There we go, music. Yay. There's always more to talk about. I've made a series of 5 tutorials that are designed to kind of get you started with all the basics of using MuseScore, using Screen Reader. Now that we know that Mixer is a thing that kind of has its own story associated with it, I'm going to look into it, and if I can show you how to do it, I'll make a tutorial for that specifically. And if it turns out that there's bugs that need fixing, I'll make sure those are reported. So next week will be the first week of the month, so I'll be doing my Ask Me Anything session, and that's where all I do is take questions. I don't have any preconceived notion of what I'm going to talk about. You just come in and ask me questions, and I try to answer. So that's always a lot of fun when we do that. It's the first Wednesday of the month. Tomorrow, Music Masterclass is where we talk about, composing, arranging, improvising, creating music in general, and as I announced in my newsletter and elsewhere, I'm going to continue this accessibility theme by doing that essentially dark. In other words, we're not going to be looking at music. We're not going to be looking at my hands on the keyboard. We're going to be talking about music by listening to it and talking about what we're hearing and getting inside harmony, get inside different aspects of what we're hearing using our ears and the language of music to talk about it. So that's going to be kind of a fun session, I think, and it's something I'm looking at doing probably fairly regularly. So I want to thank everyone again, and I will see you all next time.
Mastering MuseScore Community, MuseScore Café, End Stream button, confirm, clickable confirm button. Stream successfully ended. Exit NV, OK.